Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first ever co-episode between the Living Force and the Cosmic Force on the Youtini Podcast Network. I'm one of your hosts, Eric Eilerson, and joining me today, it's an afternoon show, are Jacob and Emma from the Cosmic Force and a special guest. And let me tell y'all, if you like shooting last, viewing from a certain point, adventuring in the High Republic, and most importantly, racing to Crashpoint Tower, you are in the right place. Because, my friends, we have Daniel José Older. Welcome to the show.
Hey, it is I. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, man. Of course. Viewers, you are watching this and listening to this a little later, but today is launch day of Race to Crashpoint Tower. And before we get into anything else, Daniel, how you doing? How were your last 6 hours?
Honestly, the truth of it is great, first of all. I'm also... like editing a totally different non-Star Wars book. So it's really hard to focus because my Twitter is just constantly like love, like it's beautiful. You know, it's people being like, congratulations and da-da-da and awesome reviews. And I just got a review from like a 7-year-old. It's really sweet.
Yeah, man.
I just reposted on Twitter. But I'm also like, I must focus. Focus is like out the window. So I just took a nap. That was amazing. And hopefully that'll recalibrate me and we'll see how it goes. But everything is going really well. We had a great panel last night with Barnes & Noble and it's been really great.
Well, I'm so glad. It's so deserved. Crashpoint is such a freaking fun novel. No spoilers in this interview, folks. Don't worry. Don't click away. But I'm glad if you got a split focus, it's for something that fun. So, Emma, if you want to go to our pre-approved list of questions, let's go ahead and jump in.
Yeah, let's do it. First of all, Daniel, I loved Race to Crashpoint Tower, and I'm loving your work on the High Republic Adventures. Just really solid stuff all around.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
But before we dive into that specifically, let's start with the day that you got that first phone call or email or communication that you were going to be an architect of the High Republic, which, by the way, is a very cool title, I must say. What was that feeling like for you?
Job titles I've ever had, I think.
Yeah, right. What was that feeling like to be part of this amazing group of people that gets to build this brand new era in Star Wars?
Totally, just about as incredible as you might imagine. What's really cool is that it had happened in person. Did I freeze?
No, you're good. You're good.
You're good.
Yeah.
What's really cool is that it actually happened in person. I was on tour for my middle grade historical adventure series, Dactyl Hill Squad, which is about kids riding dinosaurs into the Civil War. And my tour took me through San Francisco, and I hit up Michael Siglain to let him know I'd be in town. And he said, "Oh, perfect. I wanted to talk to you about something." And I was like, this could either be really good or really bad. You know? Like getting pulled into the principal's office, right?
Yeah.
Like the coolest principal in the world.
For sure.
And look, anytime I get a chance, that's like, we talk a lot about the Skywalker Ranch, which is one of the most sacred places on earth, honestly. But we don't talk enough about how great Star Wars headquarters, Lucasfilm headquarters is in San Francisco, which is a truly also really magical place where ILM also is housed. It's in the Presidio, which is this really beautiful park. And San Francisco has always been one of my favorite cities. So I just never pass up a chance to get over there if I can. They have the Yoda fountain, all that. So I just went on over and Michael took me into his office and closed the door. And I was like, oh boy. And I always say it's basically like there's a scene in Solo that's in the preview, but I think they cut out of the final movie where Beckett is like, I'm putting together a team, right? And like everyone was like, yeah, I'm putting together a team. And then we're all looking for it in the movie and it's not there. That's what, like, that Mike was Beckett in that moment. And like he was like, all right, you know, this is what I'm doing. Of course, at the time it wasn't the High Republic yet. That was still a year or so more away from being established. The idea was really just to put a group of so-called, and I will take this moniker, all-star Star Wars writers, and together and see what we could craft and see what corner of the galaxy could we carve out to make our own and launch this huge cross-platform initiative that would be ours to play in. And that's what we did.
Jeez, just the idea of that much just openness and trust is just so cool from our point of view, because I feel like for years people heard about like, you know, there's rules and everything is pretty strict, and then every time that, you know, the Luminous squad, you guys all talk about it, it's like, yeah, they trusted us first and then the project, and that idea is so cool.
Yeah, and I think I mean there of course there's like anytime you're playing, even when you're doing regular Star Wars stuff, like of course you're playing in someone else's sandbox. And
Sure.
More than that though, like it's just that there are so many people in that sandbox. It's not even like it's someone else's. Like there's a lot of other kids playing there, and they're doing a lot of things, and you don't want to knock over a castle that someone's been building, you know, for years and years, right?
Right.
So they do their best to avoid that, and that's always what it's felt like. Like, what I've been surprised by more than anything is how little I've been like restricted, honestly. And I said this on Twitter before, I constantly write with the understanding that, like, not even in a bad way, I just know, you know, like I don't know what's going to make it past story group and what isn't, but 90% of the time they're like, this is great, just make the guy purple or whatever, you know. That's so awesome. Like I just finished edits on a comic script for High Republic Adventures, and I was like, oh, I can do all of this? Like, word? Like, it just blew my mind, and it's fun.
Biscuits, biscuit recipes in Star Wars, man.
No comment, but yes.
Great. So speaking of that High Republic work, a lot of your High Republic work, and especially all your novels like you talked about with Daptile Hill Squad, they focus a lot on kids as heroes. Like, these kids are competent, they're curious, they're complicated, right? And why is that so crucial to you as a writer specifically, that you write books about kids, but they can do anything adults can?
Right. Oh, because it's true.
Yep.
Right.
There you go.
But also, I think, like, to me, the fundamental piece of children's literature that makes it children's literature is that it focuses on kids. Like, they are front and center. They're the ones who the story is about. We might dip in and out of points of view of adults here and there, but for the most part, we are telling kid-focused stories about kids, driven by kids. And it's really cool to get to do that in a world where, you know, young people are given a lot of responsibility as Jedi. You know, even back then, like, they're trying not to make child soldiers out of them. Even back then, right? Like, they're under attack constantly, and that's the reality of that. So they have to be combat ready. And with that, it sucks for the actual kids, you know. But fortunately, they're not real. So, you know, we get to get great stories out of those adventures and what that means to be a young person in a galaxy that's changing very fast, and suddenly going from peace to war, which, not for nothing, is something I think a lot of kids can relate to, unfortunately, in this world, which is also changing very, very fast, much faster than it did when most of us were kids. And it's startling, you know. I think kids are dealing with that trauma in a very real way. And my hope is that, you know, they'll see themselves in these young folks that we get to follow running around the galaxy, you know, having fun with lightsabers and defending each other and themselves, and, you know, learn a lot too, but also mostly have a good time.
Yeah. Like, I mean, the idea of a kid being able to be like, you know, I'm having a tough day, but Lula had a really tough day, but look how much fun she had, and look how much stuff she could actually do, and she, you know, fell down once. Like, it's stuff that I wish I had as a kid too.
And it lets us talk, because the Jedi Order is the way it is, and just in general Star Wars is, you know, it's like we get to have those deeper conversations too, I think, you know. And you see that in Crashpoint Tower when Lula and Vernestra are having this really complicated conversation about attachment and the Force and what it means to be a Jedi on the way into battle, right? And like, you know, that's what you got to do. You got to get it in there when you can, when things are moving fast.
Yeah, it's like, honestly, that I love that part of the story. It reminded me of like Gandalf and Pippin when they're just like waiting. He's like, Gandalf, what's it like? He's like, well, here you go, man. This is what's gonna happen.
Exactly.
Love it.
Yeah, so, you know, starting from High Republic Adventures and going to Race to Crashpoint Tower, you've really had a great opportunity to transition, bring in a lot of the same characters like Lula and Zine. What's it like? How does your process change when you're writing for these different medium but using the same characters?
Mostly it's a question of just trying to, like, use the medium for all the things that it allows you to do, and, like, really, I don't want to say take advantage of, but really take advantage of the medium, you know. So, like, with prose, you can go much deeper into a character's head, even if you're not writing in first person, which these books aren't. This is what we would call close third, right? So it's like the narrator's right behind the person, and we're seeing into their thoughts a lot. And you can't do that as much with comics. You can do it visually in certain ways, but you're not going to have like panels and panels of just words of internal thoughts, right? Because that would be boring. But it works in a book. And so that's something that I really wanted to use the opportunity of having Lula in a novel to get into that mindset of what she's experiencing. You know, like, for Lula, one of her big conflicts is that she's extremely ambitious, right?
Yeah.
And you like it's almost like a backwards thing to want to be the greatest Jedi in the world. Like that's problematic, right?
Yeah,
Jedi
I love it.
like about like being the best. They're just supposed to be great, like whatever, you know. And so she struggles with that. She's a teenage girl and she's trying to figure out her way through that. And it doesn't make her less of a great friend, which is something that I really love about her. She really takes care of everyone around her, and she's a leader in all these ways. And she also really wants to get ahead and be the best, right? So here's a great opportunity to talk about that and put her in different situations where she can internally process that. Whereas with the comic, like that still comes up. That's the first thing we know about her, right? We're introduced immediately through her first person, inside thoughts. But it's more about the action and the things that the scenarios that she's put in where she has to make decisions. And also, like with the comics, it's all about letting Harvey Totally Bao, who's a genius, go wild.
My gosh. Yeah, shout out. Oh my God, it's so good.
incredible.
Stuff.
Yeah. So I just want to like let him spread his wings in every way possible. Right at the beginning of the run, I emailed him and I was like, what are your favorite things to draw? So I can try to like toss them to you sometimes. And he was like, no, I literally love to draw everything. And I thought at the time, I was like, nobody loves to draw everything. But it turns out Harvey really loves to draw everything. And you can tell in how he draws it, because everything he draws, whether it's a really funny scene or ridiculous scene or absolute carnage, he kills it like out of love.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that's jumped out about High Republic Adventures so much to some folks that may not have read like Adventures comics in the past. Like the pages that you write and he draws are so dense with like there's lives in the background and like the action scenes are double page spreads of ship battles. But if you look, there's all these other Jedi, and that takes so much time that I'm sure not everyone looks at. But the fact that he does all that is incredible.
I know, and I almost feel bad because it's like. I guess if I hadn't written so much prose where I feel like I did my due diligence, which is like write in all the details and put it on, but with comics, it's different. Like it's not your job as the writer to do all that. It's the artist's job. And fortunately, Harvey loves it. But, I'll write a comic that's like huge space battle or a panel description, huge space battle, the Nile versus the Jedi. Bah! And literally like, that's the whole description.
Dang.
And then Harvey will take like 4 days of being like, ridiculous and absolutely iconic spread, and
yeah, it was crazy. Some of those like battles on Tremont 4 where it's like there's so much happening, so much going on, but it like doesn't overwhelm you. You can like you can look at it, see clearly what's happening, but then like take the step back and get that bigger picture of really what all is in this panel.
Exactly. That's Harvey.
Yeah, it's almost like a Where's Waldo. You could go back to these pages and pick out something new each time, and it's so much fun, and they work so well with the story that you've written. And speaking of that, you've successfully woven a lot of major story elements into the High Republic adventures, such as Marcian Ro's mystery weapon, among others, as well as big characters that are prominent in Wave 2, and so I want to ask, what is it like being able to work alongside the other Luminous authors and creators while spanning this grand story over so many different titles and mediums?
Let me actually ask you guys a question. I will answer that, but I'm wondering if you picked up on the Easter egg about whatever happened to Yoda in Crashpoint Tower.
I have not read the book yet, so the other two have.
It is.
Yeah.
No.
Right.
Oh my
I don't think I did.
Oh,
I read these things too early.
I'm
gonna have to read it again.
I'm gonna read it tonight. That's it.
I got the notification in the middle of this interview that it's on my doorstep right now, so give me like a week. And
That's fantastic.
Okay, well, to answer your question, I will point out slyly that there is an Easter egg in there, and it's a thread that I pull throughout all my High Republic writing. So we'll see.
Oh, interesting.
Down the road in other ways. I'm not gonna say where. But that really is, I would say, like, it's the most fun and it's the most challenging part of the project is to coordinate. Like we were talking about earlier with like when you're writing Skywalker Saga era canon, you're coordinating with people who are nowhere to be seen, right? Stuff that was written 40 years ago. Sometimes it depends on what, and everything since, not everything, but but this is like we have the benefit of being able to literally call each other on the phone and be like, oh, blah, 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 and discuss a topic or whatever. Or usually it happens in the Slack, and someone like when I was like, as soon as I read Into the Dark, I was like, I really want to get the crew of the vessel in to hang out with the Padawans. it's literally like parents making a play date. I would like hit up Claudia and be like,
Yeah.
"Hey, are you guys free? Like, can they hang out with my kids? You know, like in this era?" And she'll be
That's
like, "Let me check
great.
their calendar." Okay, no, they're not doing that. You know,
Wow.
I love that.
Yeah, I love the moment from the Barnes and Noble panel last night where Justina Ireland was
it's
like,
like a
"Oh,
fighter pilot just flew over my house.
okay,
Oh wow.
Oh, I get
Oh,
it.
I just
Yeah.
heard it. Yeah.
yeah." It's like Justina
okay.
Ireland in the panel last night. It's like, "Yeah, I called up Cav and asked if I could kill this
Right.
character." He's like, "Oh yeah, you're good."
Exactly. It's exactly that. And then when you're done, you know, you send it to them or you put it wherever, you know, people can read it and they bounce it back and forth and you kind of land there. And that's, you know, like I said, it's just like really fun because you're much more in conversation with a literally like living creator and their living characters in a way that's a little bit different, you know, with other Star Wars stuff.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that many playdates I went to as a kid that I might die at, but you know what? There probably were some. But speaking of those kids of y'all's, so there's a ton of amazing characters in the High Republic. You guys have made so many already classic, memorable characters, and I'm sure there's a ton we haven't met that you all love even more than we know.
Yes, I can confirm that. I just saw concept art of one today that I'm like dying for people to see, and I can't even. I know,
Which
sorry.
no, again, so a sidebar on that too. The fact that there's so much concept art of this era is
No, it's great.
what a
right?
great idea. Like the amount of visuals of the High Republic, I think is something that has blown us all away continuously for like a book initiative. Like comics, yes, but
That was very
all the
intentional.
concept.
I think that was really a smart decision that I know we talked about from the beginning. Like, if we're going to do this, we need people to be able to see these characters really clearly. Because one of the hardest, first of all, one of the things we all love the most about Star Wars is the visual aspect. Even those of us who love Star Wars books, like we love the visuals, and
Right.
you know, and that just gives people something to really sink their teeth into, and like have a kind of a point at which we can all converge and be like, okay, this is what they look like. And what's really cool is just seeing them in the hands of so many different artists, right? So it starts with concept art, but then we get Peter Anderson's great work in all the middle grades, and we get Harvey's work, you know, like, and then that's what's so cool about seeing characters crossover too.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I guess I know this is a dicey question and it's not a gotcha, but do you have a favorite character that you've gotten to create and then a favorite character that someone else created that maybe you haven't been able to write yet? Like who are some of your standouts in your heart?
Right. Man, no, it's a great question. And I feel like it's a cheat to be like, I love them all differently, but it really doesn't.
Yeah.
Like there's just moments. I will say this, like, this is a bit of a teaser, but in the next couple arcs, in the next two arcs specifically of High Republic Adventures, we really get to go deeper with Farzala and Quart. And
sweet.
yeah, and that was really fun for me because they're not central characters in the first arc, and but they're there and they're a constant presence, and I love them. And I kind of had like sort of vague notions about what was going on with each of them when I first started, and then those grew in part through, you know, seeing Harvey's art. And you know, so it was a very like holistic kind of organic process of understanding who they were because we had more time to do it because they're just sort of hanging around on the side, right? But now we get to go deeper into them, and there's levels of hilarity and depth that I just didn't know was true about them until I wrote them more. So they're two of my standouts for sure. But then obviously like Lula, Zine, I think the moment with Zine, and I won't spoil it, but in the moment towards the end of the 5th issue of High Republic Adventures, where Zine kind of makes a very particular place, that's one of my favorite moments. I feel like the whole series emotionally was leading up to that moment, like up before that. There's cool battles in that scene, in that issue. There's a lot of stuff. That issue is heavy with stuff.
Yeah.
But that moment is like, it's so pivotal, and it also the Jedi reaction to that moment. You know, like in the follow,
Right.
in the next couple of pages, we see how they respond to her doing that. And to me, that's really telling and indicative of the whole Jedi Order at that time, which is not trying to cast people out, but trying to bring people into the fold in lots of different ways and being expansive in how they even understand what it means to be, you know, associated with the Jedi Order, even if you're not a full Jedi and all those things. So that's those moments really stood out for me as a writer.
Yeah. Man, it just remembering those moments gets me a little emotional thinking about that book because it's like you talked earlier about how your books are so good about teaching kids lessons, but like just saying that out loud is like, man, how many adults and older people also may need those lessons.
Oh
of,
yeah,
like,
definitely.
You know,
Yeah,
come on.
yeah, and you know, again, with the moments with Lula understanding attachment, there's a lot of discussion up ahead about fear, because these kids, you know, in the middle of a lot of fear, and Jedi aren't really supposed to feel fear, right? Like, but what kind of a human or sentient species are you if you don't feel fear, right? So there's a lot with the Farzala. We'll talk more about fear with that arc. And there's just so many cool conversations to be had. But to answer the other part of your question, it was definitely the vessel crew. Especially like writing Geode is a challenge.
Let's do it. Yes.
Like, it's hard to write.
That's the question we all wanted to ask, by the way.
So when Claudia gave her thumbs up on that issue, I was like, oh, I did something. Like, look, it's hard to write a sentient rock. I will say that as soon as I read that character, I was like, Court and Geode have to hang out. Oh, those are two characters.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
Chilling, like, obviously, right? So that may or may not happen, but I'll tell you, that was on my wish list from the beginning.
It's awesome.
That's amazing. Oh my goodness. I cannot wait to see that.
What's like interesting with those two characters is, like, obviously Harvey can bring a lot to Court because you don't really have any intelligible dialogue, but he can still emote and everything. Exactly. But then you have Geode where he doesn't have any dialogue at all, and he's a rock. So
hey, it's Vintian. Come on now.
Yep.
I'm so excited for the next issues with the crew and Court and Farzala. But
they're on Nal Hata, which is also a planet I've always found really fascinating. You know, we see it in the Clone Wars, but not much besides that. So it was fun to explore.
That's awesome.
Sweet.
Yeah.
So taking a quick a reprieve from High Republic related questions and talking about some fun characters. You have a one-shot comic with 4 LOM and Zuckuss coming up this year for War of the Bounty Hunters, and you also, you know, happen to write those characters, that duo from a certain point of view, Empire Strikes Back. What drew you to this these set of, you know, relatively minor characters in the whole grand scheme of things?
You know, I'll be honest, I feel like I didn't really crack how to write them until the Marvel one-shot. Like, if you read the certain point of view story, you'll notice that it's really from a point of view of not them.
No, it's man.
Yeah, it's like it's this little reporter who's supposed to be writing like a lifestyle piece on it, like a puff piece basically on how they're great, you know, what's it called, and they're not, and so it goes awry. And there's a shootout and, you know, all that. But, and, you know, they're pivotal in the story for sure. I just didn't know how to get into their heads. And it was really writing the Marvel, and really actually where Charles Soule left them off at the end of issue 1 of War of the Bounty Hunters. It really like made it make sense to me in terms of how to write it. So I know that's a little vague necessarily, but I do, now that I've written them, I'm like, oh, wow. Like, and they came to me with that. I wasn't like, let me write 4 LOM and Zuckuss. Now I love writing them, and I wasn't mad at it. I was like, great, I'll let's do this, you know. But all of the underworld stuff is always like a point of fascination for me with Star Wars. So any underworld stuff that I can write, I'm always happy to do it. So I was like, great, let's do this. I had no idea how, but again, like where did we kind of leave them at the last time we see them with Charles? Really kind of like clicked for me, and I was like, oh, this is how we really get into them and get into like telling a really complex story about them. And it is a really complex story that it's stuff that happened in between them that I never thought we would see, and I'm just excited for people to see it. There's also a couple little High Republic Easter eggs in there and some new characters that I'm really excited about, and an older character that I have never gotten to see that I'm excited for people to see.
Sweet.
That is quite the tease, sir.
Yeah. Also, I gotta ask. I know that it's written a certain way that we get 4 LOM. Are you a 4 LOM or 4 LOM guy?
Look, it's 4 LOM. I understand that canonically it is 4 LOM.
Yes.
And every time I have to write it in a comic dialogue script, they say 4 LOM, but it is 4 LOM.
All right, great.
I say it for LOM. I always have, and I've gotten a lot of flack for that in our
Emma,
in our
you're
group
from
chat.
Maine. It's a different area. I don't know. It's
that
weird.
is true. Maine is,
Yeah.
you know, but technically she's
breed.
right. She's technically, canonically correct.
I am canonically correct.
Yeah.
You're right.
You're correct, but we're right. I think that's the balance.
It's the classic Daniel Jose Older quote tweet canon. moment
Exactly.
right
There it is.
Exactly.
Oh, that's fantastic. So moving back to the High Republic and some more
Mhm.
new stuff. This fall you'll be releasing the miniseries Trail of Shadows. So what was it like transitioning from the High Republic adventures to Shadows with their different target audiences?
Yeah, they're really different. And
Yeah.
that's the Forlom and Zuckuss thing was actually kind of a nice warm up to that, because that's a
Mm.
similar vibe in terms of audience, and like it's very gritty, and it's like much more like Reservoir Dogs than Avatar: The Last Airbender, I guess. Like, right? Like,
Great. There's the pitch.
yeah. And so Trail of Shadows is more for me, like the inspirations are kind of True Detective, Seven, the movie what I just rewatched it. It's amazing. This that Hong Kong action.
uh,
uh
uh, It Man? No,
no,
no. That's
oh man, the name just went out of my head. Hard
content.
boiled.
Oh, hard
Hard
boiled.
boiled.
no Hard Boiled.
Yeah,
So
amazing.
yeah,
Oh, I love that movie.
yeah.
I saw it when I was a teenager, and I didn't realize how much it influenced me until I rewatched it recently, and I was like, oh yeah, this is all the stuff I'm always doing. And then the Maltese Falcon, like all those old noir movies I love so much. So a lot of that went into it, and then of course Star Wars. But what's cool about it is that it would be cool enough if it was just like Star Wars noir, right? That's enough for me to buy it no matter what.
Oh,
But
me
what's
too,
great
yeah.
about this is that it's on its own, it's a great detective story, but it's very, very integral to the larger High Republic arc in a lot of ways. And there are cool, tie-ins to things just across the board, around all the entire initiative. It's all very connected, and it's also really fun to see a Jedi pair up with a non-Jedi, and what does that look like?
Yeah.
And especially when it's the gritty underworld that we're dealing with. I'll leave it at that.
Totally
I can't
fair.
wait
Yeah.
for it. It sounds amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so every time we hear about the connectivity of the High Republic, it still just amazes me. Like it's just something that we've never seen, and we're so excited to keep seeing.
Thank
And to kind of go to the bigger picture for a second here as we get close to wrapping up. So Star Wars in 2021 obviously looks very different than it did even a few years ago. Like Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett, they got leads of color. Basically, every book has leads of color or LGBTQ plus members. And as someone like you who hasn't shied away from calling out whitewashing and fantasy literature and all those things over the years,
Mhm.
what do you think is so important about just kind of keeping that momentum going forward, especially in Star Wars?
I mean, it's just important because it's true, just like that's always been the fight, it's like
Yeah.
we're really always just trying to get people to tell more honest stories about the world,
Yeah.
which Star Wars has always wanted to do and done to different degrees of success, over the years. So, to me, like the question of diversity isn't so much about like politics as it is much about telling the truth.
For sure.
And the world is very complex. There are many genders, there are many races, there are many colors, and that's just a
Yep.
basic fact. There's no way to really like not want those to be represented
Mm-hmm.
without bigotry. Like what is anyone's
Yeah.
argument for being like, no, they shouldn't be in there? Of course they should be in there.
That's
It's
it.
really just very basic.
Yeah.
So I think it's always just about telling the truth and telling great stories and great adventures, and that's what we all strive to do, across the board.
Love it. Yeah, and and it is shown. I don't think it's an accident that the kind of rise of Star Wars literature the last couple of years, especially in the popular cycle, has coincided with all these new stories and all these new communities that are like, oh, I'm in a Star Wars book. It's not just people that look like honestly, they look like me. I've been in Star Wars all my life, but now there's like all kinds of stories that are coming, and all these people are coming to read the books, and it just makes
Exactly.
sense.
Yeah, and
You know?
honestly, like the feedback that I've gotten from people who are just like, wow, I've never seen myself in Star Wars to this level before. Like that's just
Mhm.
really makes it all worthwhile on so many levels. And that's been true of my non-Star Wars work too. And
Yeah.
that's really always just like the most fulfilling feedback to get. Not just that they appeared in there, but that they saw their humanity in that character. That
Right.
character was a real lived in flesh and blood entity that really spoke to them and to their reality. Like that. I think people who've never had to translate themselves don't really know the heartbreak of having to translate yourself and try to like
Mhm.
fit a character into who you are somehow because you
Mhm.
don't see yourself anywhere. That's a very heartbreaking experience to go through, especially as a child in a franchise or a genre that you love, but to feel like it doesn't love you back because you don't exist in it. if you don't know that heartbreak, you don't know that heartbreak, and that's cool. But don't try to
Right.
take it away from other people.
100%. Well, I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
representation is just so important in Star Wars. If we've learned anything in the last few years, just getting more people represented in stories, and I don't think anyone does it better than you. And so on behalf of everybody, like, thank you for giving us a diverse set of characters. It's very important, and it only improves the stories,
I
and it helps
appreciate that.
people see themselves. So thank you.
Thank you. That means
Yeah.
a lot, and that's really what I strive to do. On top of telling great stories, I think the one thing that all Star Wars fans can agree on, and there's not many things that's true though, is that
yeah.
like stories really do matter.
Yeah.
Like Star Wars is about good stories, and we love Star Wars because we love good storytelling. Obviously, like the creatures and the ships and all that, like we have our pockets of things that really make us happy. It's the creatures for me. But at the end of the day, those matter, and those are great, and we love them so much because they're wrapped in a great story. So for me, like, if stories are that powerful and they matter that much that it can, literally bring millions of people together across the world, people who hate each other sometimes, right? Like, that's a powerful thing. I have to take that power with a lot of responsibility. And if I
Mhm.
don't, people get hurt. That's really
Right.
what it comes down to. Like, I don't, you can't be an irresponsible storyteller. It's irresponsible. There are consequences to it, so it's not really about like censorship or telling people what to do, anything else. It's about taking very seriously the responsibility of story, which is in my hands.
Well, I mean, that's it. That's what we're not gonna get better than that. So I want to say, as we wrap up here, first of all, congratulations on the day. Again, Race to Crashpoint Tower is out now.
It is
High
out
Republic
now.
Adventures keep coming out.
Yeah.
Look at all these beautiful projects coming out. You work with
Yes.
some ridiculously talented artists that
Truly.
just blow our mind away. Before we let you go on off to either nap again, edit again, or just have a nice drink at the end of the night, tell folks
All
where they
three.
can find you and what's coming up.
For sure. Let's see. My website is Daniel José Older. That's got all my books, where you can easily find them. It has a blog actually where I was keeping track of my life as a New York City paramedic for the 10 years that I did that. That's also a lot of where I learned to write, was just in blogging those wild stories that I was a part of and lived through. You can also find actually some online writing classes that I have posted in some different websites. They're video and audio classes about the fundamentals of writing. So by all means, check those out. Again, it's danieljoseolder.net. On social media, you can find me on Twitter at DJ Older. Instagram is at DanielJose1, and TikTok.
Oh, we didn't do the TikTok's rising star question, because your TikTok's an amazing follow, my friend. That is some fun stuff.
It's very chaotic, but I will say this:
Yes.
TikTok is the only social media platform where I am 100% G-rated.
That's fair.
There's no swearing. I try to keep it very wholesome and pure on TikTok. I succeed. But it's at Daniel Jose Older is my full name on TikTok, and that's me.
All right. Well, thank you again for hanging out with us. Y'all head over, get these books, read these comics. You haven't read a comic in a while? This is time to jump on. We hope you have a great rest of your day. And hey, everyone watching, Force with you, light in life. You know the drill. We'll see you later.
Thanks, y'all. Take care.